It's Steam Next Fest Summer 24, and that means Simon's playing lots and lots of demos. And this is going to contain 10 game recommendations. All of them are on my wish list. All of them will probably be day one purchases for me. And it's 7 city builder games with 3 sandbox games in at the end. And we're kicking off with Dawnmaker. This is a turn-based deck building city builder. Oh yes, all the jargon. But it's the game that I spent the most amount of time with and was utterly engrossed just in the demo, which means total day one for me. The idea behind this is that you're trying to build out a city with hexagonal based card placement, and where you place all of the different types of buildings and what they do generates different types of resources. Smog is trying to envelope your entire existence and wipe you away from the map, and it's constantly trying to attack you from the outside in, and you need to generate a certain amount of nature resource to hold it off and keep it back. All the while also generating rocks and science and power to be able to turn on various lighthouses and keep them operating so that you can expand your city. So it's this real big push and take and trying to work out what resources you get. Your moves are determined by the cards you've got at the bottom. You can build new buildings from your deck that you unlock over at the side, and you can add more different types of buildings into your deck whenever your cards at the bottom for your moves get shuffled. And so it's this constant juggle of, I need to make sure that I've got enough stuff going to clear the smog or keep myself from going under, but I still need to generate other types of resources to turn the lighthouses on and keep you going. It's really, really strategic, and there's so many different options that you can go for. And again, the placement of tiles, you need to kind of keep things in groups or next to each other so that they can boost each other and create storage to hold on things turn to turn. It was phenomenally put together, and I was wowed by Dawnmaker. And if you take anything away from this from the city builder or deck builder side of things, get this game. I loved it. The next game on this list was a really pleasant surprise, and it's called Fantastic Haven, because it picks various different things from city builder games, but also management games, because you look after a set of mages who have wandered into the Fantastic Haven world, and you need to set them up with like kitchens and digs, and then like alchemy areas for them to research new spells and potions, and then to take over golems so that they can be inhabited by magic and go off and harvest resources for you. But then as you start to get a caravan mission and go out and trek all of the world around you and meet other inhabitants and start to have that kind of diplomacy discussions that are going on, you also come across different creatures. And this is where it starts to become a bit Planet Zoo. These magical creatures require rehabilitation, and you build biomes after you put them in like a little Medicare facility to learn about them. But the biomes have to have the right types of temperature, humidity, water, feed, trees and foliage. And then you can put various different animals in there together and see whether they become friends or whether they hate each other's guts, because some are more sociable than others. And so it was like a city builder game with a Planet Zoo for magical creatures thrown inside it, and it felt really good. The idea is that you rehabilitate these creatures and then set them back off into the wild so that they can be in their natural habitat, and that's exactly where the story of the demo ended. But the half hour or so that I was mucking about with this experience, absolutely sublime, super excited for it. And I usually get on quite well with games published by Goblins Publishing because they have a knack of finding interesting sandboxy, city buildery strategy games. And this looks like a real mashup of all kinds of things done exceptionally well. So yeah, Fantastic Haven, another big thumbs up. The next game on this list is Technotopia, and this is a city building card game roguelike, so again ticking all of the boxes for current trends these days, where you play as an AI trying to build the perfect city. This game's quite philosophical because there's 4 different factions essentially: the government, the people, the business sector, and the elites that just want to masquerade in their own glory. And every building in this city plays into one of those 4 strengths, but normally disadvantages another one. And then as you rock around and build out your city by placing these buildings in certain arrangements so that they can be boosted. You'll come across events that will always weight one side over another, or ask you to fulfill certain criteria which will start to bend the shape of your city out of sync, essentially. And at the end of each business week, you'll have costs that will take away from those 4 factions. And if any faction reaches 0, which is very easy to do, you will then have your city fail and you'll need to restart again. But every time you restart, because you'll have touched on different events and unlocked new buildings, you've got more to play with in your starter deck and more things to think about. So the game gets exponentially more interesting the more that you play, but you've got to balance more and more things as you go. This was initially a bit of a slow burn to begin with, and then on the 3rd try round I was getting to understand lots and lots of nuances around it and was having a great time. So Technotopia, bear with it for the first 10-15 minutes, and then afterwards was a total blast, so a big thumbs up from me. Continuing the dystopian theme is Neongarten, which is a minimalist cyberpunk city builder that felt more like a strategy game most of the time, but I'm including it here because it was great fun and it's still city building. The city that you build though is a ginormous tower full of loads and loads of blocks, and you build up the tower as well as around yourself. And the idea is that you have different types of buildings that you need to place next to each other to generate as much revenue as possible, because game over happens if you can't pay your taxes at the end of each working week of the game. So, for example, you might place a coffee shop in the centre of your level 0 or level 1 of your tower. And then if you place some residential blocks around it, those residential blocks will then generate money because they're going to the coffee shop. That coffee shop will then double its revenue if you place it next to a boardwalk, because that's considered prime real estate. You can have a pub, but then it will double its income if you put it next to a nightclub because it's right next door and everyone will go out from the lash. But you'll then start to get industrial areas like toxic waste dumps, which are very handy for industrial areas to generate money. But if you place it next to a residential area, there's a cone of effect that will reduce down and actually take money away from residential areas as you go. At the end of each working week, you pay your taxes if you can, and then you select a perk which will really lean into what you've built so far, hopefully, depending on what it is that you want to do. Say increase residencies for the bottom 4 layers of your tower or something like that, or introduce parks so that if you've got some nice pristine areas in your tower, that will double any resources for residential areas next to a park. There's all kinds of different things, but fundamentally it gets more and more complicated the more you start to build, because things are positive, things are negative, and you need to really think about how you go about building things, both on the levels but also levels on top of each other. The only comment that I had about this that was slightly negative was I did find that the visuals get quite difficult to discern sometimes as you're going up and down layers, but the actual gameplay itself was fantastic and I had a great time playing it. The next game sounds equally dystopian, Nekokami, the Human Restoration Project, but actually it's quite uplifting and chirpy, and if anyone's played DOF Romantic, you'll feel right at home here. And that's because it's the same type of gameplay, but just with a slight spin on it. With DOF Romantic, you were using various hexagonal tiles to place them together so that you created biomes of certain, like trees or water or flowers and fields or whatever it is that you're doing, and the same applies here. But instead of DOF Romantic's endless possibilities, in Nekokami each type of biome has only a certain amount of levelling up that it can do before it's at maximum capacity, and then it generates kami, which you can then use to then get more tiles and continue to expand your worlds. The interesting spin here is that there's various different cat gods that will throw bombs onto your map that you'll have to choose which one to defuse and which ones not to. And that's because they'll then explode into like lakes that will then get in the way of what you're trying to build potentially. And so it was easy, it was simple. I really like the general art style and comedic theme of what's going on with this as you chat to the various different cat architects and they're all causing chaos and being a bit ditzy. But this is very close to DOF Romantic, so if you like one you'll like the other. I wouldn't necessarily say that this is a DOF Romantic beta though, so I love these types of games. I'll be picking this up. Your mileage might vary slightly. Next up, we have a sequel to a game that I really enjoyed. Airborne Kingdom, which came out a few years ago, and this is the sequel Airborne Empire that looks to polish up all of the things and rough edges that Airborne Kingdom may have had. This game feels nigh on identical to the original, but with a real fresh lick of paint and polish and some beautification going on in the menus and the design and all of that kind of stuff. But the fundamental principles of this game remain the same. You're a floating city builder, but as you build out your city by laying out paths and putting in various different objects, there's two things you really need to think about. Firstly, you have to keep the engines going with the amount of resources that you pick out and pluck out from the world around you as you fly from destination to destination, getting more inhabitants, building out your empire and making sure that things keep going basically for your workers. So you've got houses and coal and iron to keep the engine stoked, otherwise your empire will crash into the ground. The second thing, and the real unique aspect of this, is all around tilt. And this means that if you build out your empire or your flying ship lopsided, the whole empire starts to tilt that way. And if you go too far, it will tilt over and crash and collapse. But the more tilt you have on your empire, that then starts to affect the productivity levels and happiness of your citizens. And so some might leave, some might not be able to work. And there's little interesting things that they've added in an Airborne Empire around, like if you've not put enough lighting on your paths, then accidents might happen that will slow things down or cause damage to different areas. So there's lots of incremental increases of complexity and smoothing out and beautification of this. During the demo, I didn't see tons that was massively different from the original, but it felt like a good evolution rather than a revolution of the original. I loved Airborne Kingdom. I'll be picking up Airborne Empire quite happily. And yeah, big thumbs up from me. And if you've never played the original, it's often quite nice on special. So I'd recommend it, and I've got a review on my channel. The last city builder game is technically really a sandbox game, but hey, it's 50-50 and it's called Gourdlets. This is a city builder, but there is no end goal in sight and there's no currency. This is about removing the peril of a city builder to go wrong and just enjoying the cute nature of placing different things on your island however you see fit for your Gourdlets to interact with. Gourdlets mature the more different interactions that they have. So variety is definitely the spice of life here, but it could be that you've put down some vegetable crops. It could be they're going fishing on the fishing dock, sitting by the campfire. You can go inside each house that you put down and put down some TVs, some arcade cabinets, maybe a plant, something like that, beds, toilets, whatever it is that you want. You can customize entirely to your heart's content. But the key here is there's no objectives, there's no points. It's all about just enjoying the environment and customizing things as you go along. So keep sending that train in for adding more Gourdlets into your environment so that it feels nice and busy. But yeah, this is one of those games where if you're comfortable with a relaxed, chilled vibe and there is no end goal, I think this will scratch an itch, particularly for the cozy audience out there, because it does customization and building exceptionally well. Now, talking of building and no rules, Tiny Glade is a sandbox building game that is absolutely phenomenal. I genuinely gasped and went ooh when I was playing this game because it is so easy to manipulate the tools to build something. Now in Tiny Glade you're building little tiny diorama castles or little village nooks and crannies, broken walls, whatever it is that you fancy doing, you can build it. And you select the walls or the building tiles, and as you plump it down, it's all very 3D animated effect fired. So next on this list, talking of building and no rules, Tiny Glade actually wowed me audibly because it is a tiny castle doodle diorama type thing that is so malleable and tactile and intuitive and simple to understand. You can create gorgeous tiny little environments that you can then walk around in and take photos on, shift day to night focus, whatever it is that you want to do. They are cozy, cute, adorable, beautiful, and just... But the real key here is not just the beauty of the graphics, it's the tools. The tools are phenomenally easy to understand and they're tactile. And it's like building out with clay without having to think about it, because you select a wall or a building and then it gives you the outline and then you plonk it in nice and satisfyingly. But then you can just pull on the splines and make it thin and narrow, or small and thick, or you can stretch out the top roof of something, or you can put in another building on top so that it sticks out from the roof. You just squirtle round with your mouse and along goes a castle wall, slop in a little window, and there's lots of nuance where little extras just appear randomly, like wheelbarrow carts or vines up the wall, or a spade, or like some wood with an axe next to it to be chopped on. And all of those little tiny details make such a difference. Just going and spraying flowers around in the craggly rocks, raising and lowering the terrain. I tell you, this is a designer's dream. And so there's lots of these types of arty things out there. Tiny Glades is at the pinnacle of what these types of things can do. And I'll be picking this one up day one without a doubt. It looks and plays sublimely. Now, copy and paste what I've just said about Tiny Glade and apply it here too. Lushfoil Photography Sim is sublimely beautiful and intricate, and I swear they've stolen Olafur Arnalds to make some kind of Scandinavian, Icelandic, orchestral piano, gentle, tinkly music in the background to get at your feels, because this photography simulator is just so engrossing. You wander around these beautiful environments for photorealistic opportunities, and I genuinely stopped the demo early because I knew I was going to buy it on day one, and I didn't want to spoil location 2 and 3 of the demo, which was included. I only looked at the first one. But as you wander around, you, like a walking simulator, run and walk around all the different locations. And then you can pull out your camera, and it's like having a proper DLSR camera with all of the options available, and you see it in real time. You can crouch down. I love the fact that you can lean and tilt your body to the left and right, and it's like really does like go at like 35-degree angles as if you're tilting your head. It was so cool. But with all of these different effects and shutter options and things like that, you take your photos, you can set it to autofocus and things like that if you want, but you can go fully manual too. And the photos that you take at the end are beautiful. And so I know this won't be for everyone, but this was a especially like, ooh, moment for me. Day one. The last game on this list, I did run into a lot of problems trying to get video footage of, and it's called Weyrdlets. So God knows what you're looking at, and I apologise in advance. This is a virtual pet game, and so you pick a pet at the beginning. You do have to sign up for an online account for this game, just fair warning, and you have to for the demo, which I wasn't particularly enamoured with, but we went with it anyway. And this virtual pet lives in a little island inside the game where it's got its own house and it can do its own little chores, and it can go digging for treasure, which then you can sell at the shop for coins to then get more things for your island and your pet to keep it amused, healthy, happy, humoured, hungry and fed and watered. But then you can take it out of the game and it can run around the desktop as you're doing your work, watching videos, whatever it is that you want it to do. It can do its own thing, and that was quite cool. And then over time you'll earn XP, it will level up, it will get better stats, it will be able to do more things, and so on and so forth. And so I really like the idea of all of this. I just ran into a lot of bugs where I was really struggling to get Weyrdlets to actually work at all. So hopefully you'll have seen some footage there. If not, I'll have probably chucked in the trailer. Interestingly, Weyrdlets will be free when it comes out, so I'm looking forward to seeing how this all progresses over time and what they're going to do from a monetization point of view, because there's clearly a lot of work that's gone into this game, and I'm wondering how they're going to monetize it. So we'll keep a watching brief. And that is my 10 recommendations for city builders and sandbox games. I hope you found something interesting. And if you did, let us know what you'll be wishlisting down below. And thank you so much for watching. Take care. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/Higher Network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.